Hello. If you want to support us here at the Contemporary Gentleman, you can buy into our Spy series, links below. And depending on when this was recorded, we may or may not have an Instagram and or Patreon. If we do, links are below. Cheers. Hello everyone, James Donaldson here with the Contemporary Gentleman, and we're bringing you a video on the Sig Sauer MCX Virtus, specifically in 300 Blackout. Now, we're going to do a video on the MCX platform overall, and we're going to do a video on 300 Blackout. So this video is pretty much focused on how the MCX platform works as a 300 Blackout host, and how those two things kind of come together. So, things like cleaning, or what it's like to clean it, or if it's hard or not, that'll be talked about in the overall video, which will probably be a little while after this one comes out, just so you're aware. Now, every item shown or mentioned in this video was acquired by a third party, so that will help us remain unbiased and not feel like, oh, we should do someone a solid and all those kinds of things. So that way you know we're being honest with our thoughts. Alright, so jumping into the meat and potatoes, let's kind of remind ourselves of what this build is all about. Key factors: light, compact, and compactable. So on the smaller end, the lighter end, as far as MCXs go. And then also you can make it even smaller pretty easily. And then finally, simple. It's a very simple setup. So let's get in. So the 300 Blackout rifle that we have has a 9-inch barrel, and after using it some, we would be interested in a 6.75-inch barrel, kind of just to test it out. The reasons being, making the overall package just a little more compact. Also be nice to get that suppressor really just even with the rail, really not for any specific purpose other than aesthetics. Let's just be honest about that. And then we'd rather shorten the barrel than the can to achieve shortening those things. Now, some people might say, well, you know, you are going to make it louder by shortening the barrel anyway, and you're going to lose ballistics when you could shorten the can. True, but a big piece of this is sound suppression. As we'll get into, it is insanely quiet, especially with the Hyperion on it. So a shorter barrel will make it a little louder, but not as louder as using a different can than the Hyperion. So also, we're really not going to lose that much ballistic capability. 6.75 is one of the lengths that 300 Blackout was developed for. It's right, more than one length. So I'm not really concerned about that. Anyway, we haven't done it yet. We haven't even bought a barrel yet, so it's not even a thing yet. So let's not worry about that. So getting into the sight, EOTech EXPS-2. So it's the 2-dot reticle. Now, I got the 2-dot reticle as it is somewhat set up for a gun to fire both sub and supersonic rounds. Now, in reality, didn't really work out that way. However, the other dot really isn't in the way at all. When it comes to magnified optics, I actually prefer very complicated reticles, and so while I do prefer a simpler reticle for, something like a red dot or holographic sight, it really doesn't bother me having just one extra dot in there, right? Like, it's one extra dot. And it does serve as a reference point that might come in handy with the future. As I experiment with different 300 blackout rounds, it will be another point to hold. It will be an extra spot where I could say, oh, at the bottom of the target, if I hold it there, or halfway up the target, I'm going to get this result. So there is functionality in it, plus if I ever end up with this optic on a 5.56, it'll serve some good purposes there as well. As I said in summary, the second dot's existence isn't hurting, so there's really no reason to get rid of the sight and get a different one. Would I get the same sight again? Hard to say. Probably not. Instead, I'd either variously consider the single dot with no even donut of death, or would go ahead and get just a regular one with the one dot and the one donut of death. So, moving on to optic mount. For the optic mount, I chose the Unity Tactical Fast Optic Riser. The 2.26 inch height over bore has turned out to be a height that works perfectly well for me in all aspects. I've had no issues with zeros or holds or anything like that. The only reason I would consider going down to a 1.93 is to have the optic height the same as the Vortex Razor 1-10 on my 16-inch MCX in 5.56. Now as it stands, that optic is currently not at 1.93, but if I wanted to get very used to the identical platform, kind of like I do with my pistols, where they're all Glock MOSs, they all have Holosun 509s as far as the guns I use offensively or defensively, mostly defensively. So when it comes to just getting the gun up in my head behind it, instead of having slightly different optics at slightly different heights, there'd be more consistency. And the reason that other optic is not currently at 1.93 is because I have a top dot on it. I still am considering 1.93, but at the end of the day, we'll just see where I go with that. I did get to try this gun with a magnifier, as you're seeing, and as I'm saying, but it's one I borrowed from a friend, and I liked it very much. Overall, just the concept of magnification didn't really add any weight that was an issue or really noticeable, realistically. I mean, it's a gun. Shoot it. You're not going to notice the addition of a magnifier. The benefits of magnifier, of course, aiming and information are obvious, and the weight, as I said, if it does become a factor, you can just remove it. Then, if you need it again, you can put it back on. So, I also very much like the Unity mount for the configuration, and will definitely be employing that. Do note, while I used a G30 to test just having a magnifier out on the system, I will be getting a G33, and when I say will, I will be doing that. I already have the Unity mount. I'm waiting for it to come in stock, so that is a decision I've already made. I don't know why I would regret that decision. If I do, I'm sure you'll hear about it on Instagram or here, but I'd be very surprised if that happened. Now light. Surefire Infrared Scout Light Pro. There's absolutely zero reason to change the light or switch. I love that I can put the light in the off position, also while the intention of this build is to shoot passively with night vision. If I needed IR help, this light can deliver that. Given the gun is theoretically for closer encounters, the given lumens and candela from this particular Surefire Vampire are more than adequate. As for the switch, I have absolutely no reason to change it either. If I was to do this again, I wouldn't mind a smaller footprint and one that is temporary only in terms of turning the light on. Perhaps a switch such as the Mod Light or one made by Unity. However, having the constant on feature with Surefire's switch for the IR light is something I like having the option of. So, basically contradicting myself. Also, the Surefire switch is great because it isn't secured with screws and doesn't require tools to remove it. This means I can easily switch it between rails faster. So, in summary, if I was to do it again, I would probably stick with the Surefire switch and, as I said, the light itself. As for the can, CGS Hyperion. Far sound performance, holy shit. A lieutenant from my unit that heard me fire this probably put it best as far as description. He said, quote, this thing sounds like an asthmatic puppy sneezing. I mean, I myself feel this is probably about as quiet as you can make a 300 Blackout, or nearly any rifle for that matter. It's certainly more quiet than using my 22 pistol suppressed with supersonic rounds, obviously, because you're hearing a supersonic crack. But I don't know, I'm just kind of trying to paint the picture. On Pew Science, if you sort the list without cutting out any calibers, just leave all the calibers there, this can in 300 Blackout is quieter than many, if not all, 9mm and several of the 22 caliber options. So it is very quiet, and we'll talk about cans comparison more in a bit, but it is very noticeable how quiet this can is. So even if you went to a Q Full Nelson, which is now the top of the list on Pew Science, I would be very surprised if one could tell a difference with the human ear. Now, we'll talk about other can options right now, but as far as the Hyperion, I'm extremely pleased with this setup. Now, something I would like to hear, as I said, is K version of this can on both the 9-inch and the 6.75-inch barrel, really just out of curiosity. Now, looking on the Pew Science chart, the K version of the Hyperion doesn't come anywhere close to where the Hyperion actually sits on the list. Now, again, curiosity. So later in this video, as I keep saying, I'll talk about the differences between this and the Gemtech 1, as well as some thoughts on some other cans. Gemtech 1 being the only other can I used on this platform. For now, the Hyperion is the can for me on this gun, and part of that too is they both have the taper. I want to say it's a 15-degree taper, so the barrel has the taper and the can does. They made up perfectly. Now, even though the can is direct thread, because of the way CGS cuts its threads, they actually, somehow the threads are tapered as well. And so, I mean, this thing has never tried to screw off on anything. And I've shot it on more than just this gun, but this can stays on. It's excellent. Now, getting into brace and stock, I started out with what was the SB Tactical MPX PSB brace. I did like the look of the brace and the functionality in general. However, I made this an SBR, so while I like both the Sig Sauer telescoping folding stock, MCX, MPX, etc., as well as the Sig Sauer stock adapter low profile tube 1913 folding with a Magpul buttstock, my preference is the adapter with the Magpul buttstock, and really that's only because of length of pull with as the adapter with the Magpul buttstock. I just like a longer length of pull, at least of right now. I'm sure as I evolve as a shooter, that's subject to change. But there's a noticeable difference, and I'll definitely have pictures now as well as shortly here, where you can kind of see the difference of where these buttstocks stop at the end of their adjustments. And now that said, while I have no use for a brace again, I might keep a Sig telescoping folding stock around for specific uses. Feel free to see my video on the MCX stock options for more information. Now, while I haven't done that video yet, I will be. It'll mostly focus on stocks, not braces. I'll probably talk a little bit more about this and that, but basically there's a lot of different options, and it comes down to more than aesthetics, that's for sure. Like I said, length of pull is probably the biggest difference between all these things. Now, as far as retracting braces stocks, I haven't bought the Sig retracting stock yet, as it's so expensive, and while I need to allocate that money to other things, what's more, I don't think you get as compact of a package. Looking at these pictures, it adds a lot of length to a gun that is meant to be compact, especially when stowed. Meanwhile, folding the stock to the side uses space that is technically free, as it doesn't add much width to this gun. So, folding is the way to go for me, unless I can get the retracting stock for a small enough price to make testing it out worthwhile. As far as the sling, last time I said, don't have it yet, but will be a black BFG, Blue Force Gear, Vicker sling with QD sewn in. And that is exactly what I have. So, obviously this picture's rolled in. Yeah, Blue Force Gear, Vicker sling. It's just the best. Now, rolling into caveats and variables, we'll start off with accuracy. It's great. Now, I didn't do any grouping. I wanted to. It was just going to be hard to. I was ready to do this video, and it was going to be hard. But that said, I can still tell you that I shot at steel plates with supersonic ammo at 300 yards, and I was hitting plates, definitely the 6-inch plate, and I may have made the 4-inch plate. And that was, I don't think I even zeroed the optic to that ammo. So, definitely missed, but that was shooter error, not weapon system error. So, I mean, there you have it. 300 yards, 6-inch plate. It's pretty good accuracy from a gun like this. I'm definitely happy with that. And so in the future, if I gotta kind of work out how I want to configure it, but I will probably use this gun to take deer at some point. So another thing I said in the past, in the last video about this 300 Blackout MCX is it doesn't seem to get hot. It's kind of true. Now, having used it through the summer, it was a very hot summer, it definitely did get hot from time to time, but I can say that compared to like my Mark 18, which I know is kind of an apples and oranges comparison, I get it, it really didn't seem to get that hot. Now, that's going to be partially the can and partially the weapon system. The weapon system, the gas is only going down the barrel, not the barrel and the gas tube, so less heat is being radiantly put out. And then also the can is allowing for better flow, as the Hyperion does, which is going to flow out more heat. So overall, the system is going to run cooler, but it can, especially weather dependent, get hot. Now, there's a big thing here. I'm sure other people have experienced it, so it's going to be a big deal to talk about it in this video, because I've looked into this and researched this a lot. And that is this brass shavings or unburnt powder that's in the gun. I noticed the first time I just took it apart, I wasn't even going to clean it, didn't clean it. There were these like brass shaving looking things. It really just looked more like a powder, not shavings. It didn't, I mean, there were little dots. You know, some people suggested brass shavings, and they just don't look like shavings to me. Now, the casings did have some markings on them that would maybe imply that some brass had been shaved off, but it's, again, looking at this material, it didn't look like shavings. So it turns out that it's more than likely unburnt powder, and it has to do with either the ammo, the barrel length, or suppressor. And so basically the unburnt powder turns to this yellow gold color due to oxidation, which actually makes a lot of sense scientifically, so I can get on board with that one, that theory. Now, with that, most powders burn all the way at 4 inches to 6 inches for 300 Blackout, and I'm at 9 inches, so kind of unlikely there. Now, I tried different ammo, I tried different suppressors, and I cleaned in between, so that it would be pretty obvious if it was still doing it, and typically it was. So, now, it could be a filler, is what some people said. So the filler, if there's too much or too little air in a round, that can be really bad. So ergo, ammo related. Now, so in the scenario of too much air, the filler is added to reduce that problem. Now, subsonics are going to use less powder, so it's going to allow for more air, so they're definitely going to have that filler put in there. So this kind of makes the most sense to me. And then, of course, if it is material shavings, I really thought this was the least likely, but then I cleaned my MCX in 5.56, so I've cleaned that once now. For those of you who are following my journey on MCXs, I've had it a little over a year, so I've cleaned it once now. More on that in another video, but I was impressed. And so, anyway, I saw similar looking shavings in the lower of that gun. Not very many, and I've really only used probably 2 or 3 different types of 5.56 ammo. So I'm not really sure how that factors in. So kind of excluding that, which who knows? There could be brass filler in the rounds I'm using. I don't think there is, because I've never seen that in my 5.56 in Mark 18, and I definitely was pretty much using the same rounds. So again, either way, overall, it's pretty much harmless. Unless you wait too long to clean it. I don't know how long that is, but overall, it's probably no more harmful than all the rest of the chemicals that have been produced from an explosion inside the gun. So, clean it at whatever rate you think is best, and I really wouldn't worry about it too much. So ammo overall, I did have trouble with Hornady ballistic tipped rounds, so I don't use any of them anymore. In fact, I gave the rest of my last box to somebody for free, just because I wanted it to go to a good home. But I had feeding issues basically with it, and I don't know if it was the gun, if the gun would be broken in, if it was magazine related. And what's interesting is I used those rounds at my friend's MCX before I got a hold of any MCXs, let alone both of them. And I don't recall my friend's MCX having any issues. So again, I don't know if it's a break-in thing. Now, I also, in having these issues with my gun, didn't have any 300 Blackout specific magazines yet at the time when I was trying them. Since then I've got them. Now again, I didn't have them with my friend's gun either. In fact, I don't think he has any 300 Blackout specific magazines. So, I don't know. Now, Sig ammo, I pretty much only run the Sig 220 grain, I believe it's OTM, subsonic rounds through it. And those have performed really great. I mean, overall they're pretty accurate. They're definitely quiet. And so, no issues. Now, and then I've used some of Sig's Supersonic as well. I don't remember. Perhaps I'll throw up some pictures if I'm feeling generous. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And so, and then I have ran some hand-loaded rounds through it as well, also from that same friend. So, and I didn't have any problems with those. So I think overall, you don't have to worry too much about ammo, which for the price of this gun and a factory adjustable gas system, you fucking shouldn't have any problems. Now, the Hornady I kind of give to, well, the ammo has polymer tip, so I get it. But overall, this should run most of the ammo that you feed it, unless you do something weird, which you might. Moving on. Now, getting into magazines in general, which I mentioned a moment ago, but other than at first, I've only used Lancer mags in 300 Blackout. And that's because I have a ton of Magpul mags. I have a lot of Daniel Defense mags. And so I have one Lancer mag that's translucent. So I got a bunch of 300 Blackout specific Lancer mags. And they're all blacked out, of course, other than the tan bottom, which I kind of like, has a little touch. And so that way, basically, I'm never confusing what round goes in what magazine goes in what gun. I didn't think it'd be too much of an issue, but you just never know, and if you can do something that doesn't negatively impact anything else, which getting those magazines didn't, then I would say you should just do it. So, fortunately, it's all worked out great. An interesting thing was, at one point, the safety did get stiff. Oh. The safety got stiff, hard to actuate, so I put a little oil on it, freed right up, just after a tad. I think I did it one evening and checked it in the morning, and it was good, and I haven't had an issue since. Now, you should also be aware that when I got these guns and started using them, I didn't clean or oil them whatsoever, and some people are going to think that's terrible, or think I'm an idiot, and these guns should be able to run in an austere environment, to include maintenance, poor maintenance. The other thing is, how else am I supposed to test it to see if it can put up with shit like the average person would throw at it? Now, I touched on barrel length a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and hit on it again, but cover different. As I said, this is the 9-inch. Now, I think this is a good medium in terms of kind of balancing maneuverability and ballistic performance. Also, it keeps the can a little bit further out than the 6.75, and so it's going to keep that heat a little further away. So basically, can kind of ends there, and then you've got your gas block back here, and so if it was closer, you'd have a little bit of more heat build up right in this area. Now, as I said, I might try a 6.75 inch just to see. It's going to be noticeable, a little more compact, especially when broken down. All that kind of stuff. But overall, if I'd just keep it in this 9-inch configuration for the rest of my life, I think I'd be more than happy with that. Form 1 SBR, yes, absolutely worth it. I'm sure people can understand, and some people experience the kind of hesitancy with Form 1ing something. It's a little different than a suppressor because you can take it anywhere and all that. And being in Kansas City, I'm right by the border, and I just really haven't had opportunities or needs to go into Missouri with this gun. I know I could file something to the ATF. I haven't tried that process out, so I don't know how hard or easy it is. I imagine it's not necessarily fast. And so, anyway, hadn't been an issue. I highly recommend Form 1ing, not just a gun like this, but you know, any gun, any platform. I look back, and if I was going to keep my Mark 18, which I didn't, I definitely would have SBR'd that for sure. So yeah, it's a stupid law. I think, as you know, a lot of people want to wait and see if the NFA gets removed. Maybe one day. I don't think anytime soon. And I think the more people that have these in their possession, the more it comes to common use. And so that's just going to help our cause in the future. So do your part. Get an SBR. Now, something else I said in the past was I wouldn't be surprised if I ended up with, as far as getting 2 MCXs, 2 5.56 guns, and then versus a 5.56 and a 300 Blackout gun. So I also said that there's a good possibility I'll just build out another upper for the SBR in 5.56, and that's kind of more the route I'm going. Now, using a different and twice expensive ammo for a different gun was and is a pain in the ass. That's the only downside. Really, the 300 Blackout, spoiler alert for the other video, it's really the main downside is the price, and it is about, at least what I'm buying for 300 Blackout versus 5.56, it is about twice the price. Now, the only reason I'm not ditching 300 Blackout is because, as I said, I'm just going to build out an upper. But there is actually a lot of application for this gun in my life. It's not necessarily going to be the take to the range and shred, especially for a night vision gun. That's always going to be the 5.56 16-inch MCX I have. But this does have some purposes. It will do some night vision shooting, has done some night vision shooting. And again, I definitely would like to get this out and hunt with it. So, but if I had to choose at the end of the day, no, I'd probably stick with 5.56. Would I stick with this platform? I'm not talking about that in this video. I'm talking about that in a different video, which will not come out anytime soon. So, moving on to the next. Now, this wouldn't be an MCX video without talking about the weight. It's really fine. I mean, yeah, you pick it up. Is this front end heavier than my service weapon 14.5 M4 barrel with an A2 bird cage on the end and fixed iron sight? Of course it is. But is it a struggle to manage at all? Is it unwieldy? No. In fact, this exact setup weighs only 8.14 pounds. That's to include, with all this stuff, the Optic. I think that doesn't technically include this rail, but I mean the difference between the other rail and this is pretty tiny. Now, with the Magnifier, Unity Magnifier, rather, it's, with the EOTech Magnifier on the Unity mount, it puts this rig just under 9 pounds, which again, in the grand scheme, really isn't a challenge, especially when all the weight is dispersed. You know, adding weight here is a lot different than adding weight down there, says physics, science, and of course the rule that, can't remember the rule, oh, perception is reality. That's the rule. So there you go. Now, I have no issue, as I said, with the weight, and I really don't even think about it when using the rifle at all. I just shoot. I just do what I'm supposed to do. Now, a lot of this is there isn't a bunch of stuff hanging off the front of the gun. Also, the weight of the suppressor is a lot closer to my body. You know, of course, that whole perceived weight thing. Versus my 16-inch 5.56 with a, you know, roughly 17-ounce can on the end. So, again, the perceived weight's a lot less. Now, getting down to this gun overall as a 300 Blackout Host, though I really don't have any experience whatsoever with any other platform in 300 Blackout, I can't imagine how one would be better than this system. And this is true mostly due to the gas system. So, and I have talked to some, I don't want to name drop other channels or anything, so, but I've talked to some people that have a lot of shooting experience and a lot of experience with a variety of guns. And I've also done a lot of research and watched a lot of videos, read articles on 300 Blackout systems in general. Now, the gas system overall, or I guess I would say the gas system and overall gun in general features functions equally well with both supersonic and subsonic. Now, though I have very limited experience, as I said, with more traditional 300 Blackout guns, such as one in the AR-15 platform, I have come to understand that they really have to be tuned. what's more, you have to basically choose super or sub sonic, and then kind of get the gun working around that round. What really perplexes me is when someone has a 300 blackout gun that does not come with an adjustable system. And many would think this isn't a big deal, especially with the invention of the adjustable gas blocks. However, I've heard a lot from a lot of different places that adjustable gas blocks are kind of finicky and oftentimes unreliable. Well, I haven't employed one, so I can't say this with my own experience. It seems to be well documented, at least enough for me to want to avoid it and not risk ending up with similar complaints. Some might say, well, this has an adjustable gas block. True, but this is a factory-engineered adjustable gas block, designed to be in the system and work accordingly. So, as someone who uses, souped-up cars with aftermarket parts in the past, so I shouldn't say used, not uses, I can tell you that as a 35-year-old husband and father, adult, I rarely really screw with cars anymore as far as like even doing an air intake or anything like that, unless it was strictly for fun. Really it's because oftentimes when the factory and engineers design something and make it one component, or they make it one component is designed to work specifically with the rest, and so on and so forth. So when I change something, I'm throwing off the performance of everything else. That's why cars have to be properly tuned to get the most out of their upgrades. These days you can do that with a computer. Back in the day, you had to know your way around a carburetor. And so getting a gun out of the box that is going to deliver is a really great way to just basically manage a gas system from the get-go, is getting a gun worth its weight as far as using a variety of rounds. Now, especially in the 5.56 model, would I like more adjustment choices on the gas system? Yes. Not as much of a complaint with the 300 Blackout variant. I think there's a way bigger difference between your two choices. And so I really haven't had I really haven't any issues with it whatsoever, especially as far as gas going in the face. And even in some of the videos I'm rolling in, it looks like there's gas, but really it's more moisture. Now remember, this is combusting. It's creating a lot of heat. And so when you're in a humid environment, sometimes it looks like smoke, but it's really not. Or gas. So, if you look at my face versus like go find my Mark 18 video, I think you can tell on my face that I'm not really wincing, or it's not really in my face. Like, yeah, it's there visually, but as far as being gas in my face, it's really not. Now, the other reason that this is such a fantastic 300 Blackout host is, again, from the factory, designed to be, it is so easy to make compact. Now, I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube for showing you how to be dangerous and take apart a gun, but of course I'll roll in pictures of this thing broken down, and it takes moments to break this thing down, so that kind of takes us into our next part of stowing this gun, and it's kind of an MCX thing overall, but like my 5.56, I don't really set it up to be able to break down easily, so especially with a 16-inch barrel. So really the subject does more pertain to just the 300 Blackout variant, and that is if you want to kind of carry it or conceal it in a bag or briefcase of some sort. Let's get into that topic. So to start out, if you want to assemble it fast, it is ideal to have the gun dismantled as little as possible. Duh, right? Obviously, now is it kind of cool or kind of fun to have it broken down all the way and you're like doing a slick, like, ooh, put the gun together thing? Yeah, totally, but if you're being realistic about, you needing the gun fast, you're going to want to set it up to have it break down as little as possible, so you can use the shorter rail so you don't have to put the rail on. And also, I would say not use the T-Rex Arms light bar, because using the short rail with that light bar, it kind of makes it the length of the 16-inch rail. So you may as well just use the 16-inch rail. So I will be taking the light bar off of the short rail, and even though it'll probably have kind of a massive suppressor shadow, the light can kind of swing up, so at least the shadow is more down than off to the side. And even in the end, I kind of agree with Kinetic Consulting when he says it's a not issue. I think it's a little bit of an issue, but it's one you can definitely get around in most cases. What's more, So, like I said, positioning the light to stick out less far, and of course a quick mount can versus thread. Saying this Hyperion is the can for this. We'll talk a little bit more about it, still will be, but it'd be ideal to have an equally quiet can, or close to quiet can, that is also direct thread, for a couple of reasons. One, protects the thread. The quick mount system will protect the thread versus the threads are loose in a bag and that bag falls and hits concrete or something. You could damage the threads, and then that suppressor is not going on there. And so you either want to protect the threads when it's in a bag, either by using like a barrel cap, which are cheap. I mean, you buy like, 40 of them for $10 on eBay, if not cheaper. But the point is you want to protect the threads, but having a permanent method of protecting the threads and a faster mounting method is kind of a combined way to improve the setup. And again, I really do like the way this direct thread's on there. The tapers match up and everything. So, whatever. Anyway, I think you see the difference in the choices that you get to make when you're looking at setting up your system. Now, obviously, like I said, quick mounting the can, it's just, if you have to stow it without the can, or with the can off of it, which is probably how you should do it, then yeah, so being able to put on faster is going to be a pro. But again, I think I could thread this on fast enough. Now, the other thing you want to do is you want to find the right bag, so the right size. I really like the Mystery Ranch bags overall, of all different kinds. I have several, and I really like, of course they just continued it, but this is the Urban Carry. It's been replaced by the Catalyst, which is probably a slightly better design, just in terms of ergonomics and pouches and pockets, stuff like that. But this fits in it great. Now it is just barely big enough, and that was a little bit of a gamble when I got the bag. I actually did a lot of measuring before I even had the gun and before I had the bag, and then got the gun and double checked measuring, and then ended up ordering it, and it did work out. But I can do it easily, but it took some experimentation figuring out how to get it in there. But basically, big part is not having to separate the upper and lower, and part of that is using the adjustable sock adapter versus the retractable deal, because it would add several inches, and this gun would probably not fit in that bag if it had that on there. Now, rail options I kind of talked about. So you've size and installation, right? So installation priority versus can. If I have to direct thread, can goes on first, then rail. And this is just for what it's worth. If I have the short rail, that rail's going on first, because the light bar, when I remove the light bar and have the light mounted further back, of course the rail will already be on there, and then direct thread the can. So kind of things I thought about was like a 10-inch can ready. So basically a shorter version of this that would probably come to roughly somewhere in here. And the reason is I could leave the rail on and still protect those threads to some degree by using the rail, and then put the can on. But at the end of the day, I don't need a third rail just for that. Honestly, it's so easy to change the rails on these things that, that is straight up, I don't have to re-zero anything. It is just straight up undo the pin, slide the rail off, slide the other rail on. Maybe you have to remove the can, I guess. But it's just so easy. So I definitely prefer either the 16-inch can or the 8-inch low profile. Again, as far as the rail is concerned, I do like this full rail, 16-inch, because it is doing a very good job of protecting the suppressor if I have to set the gun on something, as far as getting aimed and support for aiming. Also, say the can gets hot after shooting it, and I didn't pay attention at the time. Oh shit, I gotta go to work. I can throw this thing in the back of my truck. It's not going to melt anything because it is held away from any surfaces. Also, of course, the light can be as flush as I want it to. Now, I did have the light pushed out further with the can, as you've seen in several pictures by now. The reason I recessed it back is that's such a little difference. It doesn't cast very much of a shadow. In fact, it might not at all. Let's see. No, it really doesn't cast any shadow at all, so even while it looks slightly less cool, it does mean that when I take this rail off and put it in the bag, that I have this rail and light combination slightly more compact than it would be otherwise. So, then bag considerations, backpack versus briefcase. I feel like probably 98% of the people watching this video, if not more, we're just going to do a backpack. And as you've seen in pictures by now, Definitely put it in a briefcase. It works great in a briefcase. I like briefcases. I mean, pros and cons, right? So like briefcase, very conspicuous, but it is a hard case. Of course, easier to lock as well. The backpack, not going to have a lock, not a hard case. It's a soft case, at least in most cases. No pun intended. Or was it? But it's also, backpack is 1,000 times less conspicuous in this day and age, which is kind of unfortunate if you think about it. But anyway, I have to remain contemporary. So also, a backpack is going to be easier to maintain. You're going to have positive control over it, right? So it's on your back. You get in some kind of scuffle. You're not worried about losing your briefcase or someone pulling it away. Your backpack is strapped to you, obviously. So that is actually a huge plus when we're talking about why someone might break one of these down and put it in a backpack. And for anyone watching that's like, why would you do that? You know, and reference serial killer or anything. But people are concealing weapons and then going into places and shooting them up. So if good people do that too, they can stop it. And not just by shooting back, but if it's kind of more of a regular thing or more well known, people are going to be less likely to do it, as in the mass murderers. So there's that. Moving on from there, backpack also, of course, your hands free. Like I said, you get into something or you're just doing, I don't know, you ride a bike or whatever you do. You got two hands available versus having some briefcase you got to worry about. So there's that. Now, other cans, right? Hyperion. Pros being mates perfectly with the barrel, as I said. Doesn't thread off. Sound attenuation is incredible. Outstanding, rather. And one-piece construction. I like that there's no weld. It's 3D printed, but also there's no, you don't change out the back. There's no front end cap change out. It is one piece of metal. And that is really nice for just, you got your barrel to your can, one thread spot, not a bunch of other complicated stuff. Now cons, of course, direct thread does take a little bit of time. Now you got your Gemtech 1, and so the QD is fast, and the QD does stay on there and protect the threads like I was talking about, and that's a nice feature. Now cons, sound attenuation is not nearly as good. It's good, yeah, it's 30 cal can. It is designed for kind of more 308, 300 Win Mag kind of stuff. Of course it does 300 Blackout, but just, yeah, it's a different design, so it just doesn't execute as well. It is noticeable, but as far as cans go, I'd say it's average or slightly above average. Just nowhere near the Hyperion. Now the cons of the Gemtech 1, like I said, sound attenuation, but then it has an extra thread / failure point. Is it probably ever going to fail? Probably not. But it is something to think about. It's got that backing that you thread on, because you can change it between direct thread and QD. So there's that. And then of course also you have to use a shoulder adapter, no matter if you direct thread it on or if you use the QD end piece. So that is a thing. Is it a big thing? Not really, but it is a thing nonetheless. Future cans I'm interested in using, so I got a primal. At some point it'll get to me, and so I will try that out. I know the Nomad L, which I'll mention here in a moment. You know, it's very good in 300 Blackout, so I hope the primal will be. According to another channel, it is pretty good. I doubt it's Hyperion quiet or very close, but I would bet it's better than the Gemtech 1 just because of volume, and it has a newer baffle design. So those two things alone. And of course, it's going to be able to be a QD. So I'll try it when it's released, but it wasn't worth waiting to put this video out. Now, I would also consider trying a Wolfman if that ever came across my path, because I hear it's okay on 300 Blackout. I bet it's probably going to be the loudest. Compared to Gemtech 1, I don't know. Maybe it's even. But either way, I'd be interested to try it out. Now, I won't bother with a pistol can such as like my Osprey, which I'm not happy with, as I like to harp on. And trying to find a use for it, there's no way it's going to be it'll probably be way louder than the 1. And I'm already kind of turning down the 1 because it's not quite enough for me. So why would I do a pistol can? That would be ridiculous. All that said, I plan to use various means to protect the threads when there's no can mounted, as I said. This is because I tend to use the Hyperion from here on out, with the exception of when I try out the Primal. Now, I think I can thread the can on fast enough. The DT, in terms of time, isn't a big deal. And then, like I said, I plan to be smart about positioning the gun in the bag, as well as doing other things to protect the thread. All that said, an ideal setup is a can that is quick attach, yet also as quiet as a Hyperion. The only can that I'm aware of that fills this category right now is the Dead Air Nomad L. If I'm ever able to try it or hear it on one or whatever, I'd be very much interested to do so. I don't know if it's worth trying to acquire one, but anyway, those are some things to consider overall. If I was to do it all again, I would consider just starting out with the Nomad L versus some of these other cans. So, do with that information what you will. The close. Overall, if you're going to have a rifle chambered in 300 Blackout, an MCX is one of the best options, if it isn't the best. Most of the reasons due to how the gas system runs. All of that said, a determining factor is what suppressor you pair with it. Also, as I said, the versatility and compactability is another factor in this being such an excellent 300 Blackout gun, given what round it is intended for. Or, excuse me, what the round is intended for. All of that said, the versatility and compactability is another factor in this being such an excellent 300 Blackout gun, given what the round is intended for, i.e. clandestine operations. I concluded my last video with this gun with, if you choose 300 Blackout and you want a semi-auto platform, based on what I've seen so far, this is probably your best option. Well, I agree with this statement, and even more now than I did then. This has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman. Until next time, keep your composure.